Russian diplomat Dmitry Peskov speaks on the impending Witkoff-Putin meet to be held in Moscow. The diplomat also speaks on India, Russia's defense ties, and a potential $100 billion trade with India by 2030. As Russia-Ukraine peace talks gains momentum, U.S. President Donald Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff and son-in-law Jared Kushner are to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow this week. Ukraine's $3.2 billion GDP warrants have surged to 97.4 cents, their highest level since 2021, after Kyiv unveiled a restructuring plan to swap the warrants for a new rising rate bond and offered up to $180 million in cash. The International Criminal Court has rejected U.S. sanctions as an attempt to undermine its 23-year-old mandate, insisting its loyalty remains solely to the Rome Statute. European officials and the EU's representative condemned the sanctions imposed after the ICC issued an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu. Pope Leo is ending his first foreign trip with leading a mass for 100,000 worshippers in Lebanon praying at the 2020 Beirut port blast site and visiting a psychiatric hospital run by Franciscan nuns. He has urged Lebanon's religious leaders to unite amid ongoing economic turmoil in the country with the largest Christian population in the Middle East. The EU Court of Justice has ruled that Dutch courts have jurisdiction to hear an antitrust case against Apple's App Store, rejecting Apple's claim that no harmful event occurred in the Netherlands. The decision allows two Dutch foundations to proceed with their case, marking a significant legal setback for Apple in the EU. French President Emmanuel Macron will travel to China from December 3rd to 5th for his fourth state visit. As Europe seeks to balance economic dependence towards Beijing, Macron is expected to push for greater access to Chinese markets while navigating growing European concerns over trade, security, and China's global assertiveness. According to the Indonesian National Disaster Agency, the death toll from the devastating floods and landslides in Sumatra has soared to 753 people, with 504 people still missing. This marks a sharp jump from the 604 deaths reported yesterday, underscoring the rapidly escalating humanitarian crisis. Now we start with the Dmitry Peskov, Russian diplomat who is in New Delhi now and has commented on the scheduled meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff. Peskov has stated that the meeting is scheduled to take place in the next 5 hours after Witkoff lands in Moscow. During the press conference in New Delhi, Peskov has also highlighted that Russia is happy with U.S. mediation efforts on the peace deal. This meeting comes after Ukrainian president met with his European counterparts who supported the war-torn nation and stated that Ukraine will not cede its territories. Now for this discussion, we welcome Glenn Grant. He's a former advisor to the Defense Minister of Ukraine, joins us live from Kyiv. Thank you very much, Glenn, for joining us again. Good to see you. Glenn, how is your analysis on current peace efforts towards Ukraine and Russia? Do you think that it is feasible?
No, I don't. I don't at all. And I'm not sure that these should be called peace efforts. They're actually more like business deals on behalf of the US to try and actually get as much out of the out of Ukraine as possible, and to offer Putin as much of Ukraine as they can, so that peace actually appears. I'm sorry, but I just don't see Putin agreeing to this. He thinks he's winning. It's like the US and Russia and Ukraine are all three playing completely different games, but trying to find words that actually fit what they're doing, that are the same. I don't see at the end of this peace actually coming.
And when you say, Glenn, when you say the business deals, a lot of our guests actually talk about this. Oh, can you tell us why you think so?
Well, I mean, first of all, if you go back to the original 28-point peace plan, I mean, that is a straightforward America deal for giving America the maximum financial benefit from peace as possible. And that was the sort of the Trump signed peace deal. There is no pressure on Russia to compromise whatsoever. In fact, it's the other way around. That the whole of the operation from Witkoff and his team is about giving things to Russia. In other words, a large amount of Ukrainian land. And that isn't how you can make peace work. You need compromise. If Ukraine is going to compromise or be expected to give up things, then Russia must equally be expected to give up something. Otherwise, it just comes back to what Witkoff has actually written, which is that basically America gets money for joining in and doing this, and some of it goes back to Russia.
When you say that, you know, Ukraine and Russia both should give up something, what should Russia give up?
Oh, Russia should pull out. She's already lost huge amounts of her land, and she should actually pull out of Ukraine now and accept what has happened so far, because Russia has already lost 1 million people and destroyed all the complete Soviet Union army that it had before. So that would be the compromise that they give up, or at least possibly offer to pay something like $2 trillion in repatriations if they manage to persuade Ukraine to give up the land. But I don't believe that Ukraine or the European Union will accept giving up any Ukrainian territory. So we are in stalemate. Hence, really, no peace plan.
Right, and you know, in the talks, there's a particular individual who's not a politician that's present, Jared Kushner, being son-in-law. Why is he tagging along in these big bilateral talks among countries?
Well, I think that Trump doesn't actually trust very many people, but he can trust people in his own close family, and he obviously either wants someone to keep an eye on Witkoff, or other people within the talks, or he wants Witkoff reinforced by someone that is in his family, so that Putin understands that when he's dealing with Witkoff, he is actually dealing with Trump. And these things are very, very personal to people. So it's very difficult to make a judgment exactly what is going through Donald Trump when he sends his family to do something that is, you know, one of the major international actions of the time.
100%, yes. Glenn, thank you for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we stay on this topic. Ukrainian forces say heavy fighting is still underway in Pokrovsk, a key logistics hub in Donetsk, even as Moscow claims it has captured the town after months of intense battles. A day earlier, Russia's defense ministry has released a video that appeared to show its troops raising a Russian flag over the central square. Ukraine's Eastern Command says search and assault operations continue and that the Russian unit that planted the flag was pushed back, though it stopped short of directly rejecting Moscow's claim. Kyiv says Russian troops used poor weather to move deeper into the center of the strategic round and rail hub, once home to around 60,000 people. And in a separate statement, Russia's defense ministry says its forces have also captured Zeleny High and Dobropilia in eastern Ukraine. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Glenn Grant. He's a former advisor to Defense Minister of Ukraine, joins us live from Kyiv. Thank you very much, Glenn, for joining us and staying with us. Thank you. Glenn, what are we to make of these contradicting statements coming in from both sides?
Well, first of all, they will be contradicting,
Yes.
for the simple reason that the great fog of war hangs heavy over this city. But one point I make is that it's no longer a strategic hub, because basically, because because the Russian forces have moved forward, they are actually now almost surrounding Pokrovsk, and that means that it's no longer a logistic hub. It's just a strong point that Ukraine wishes to keep, because if they lose it, then Russia will move on the other side towards the next small town. So that's the first point. But Pokrovsk is now pretty much devastated, like all the other cities that Russia attacks. There is a large portion of it that is held by Ukraine. So Russia can claim, yes, we've got the city, because they can put a flag in the main square, but the main square is not actually right in the middle. So it means that both sides can actually claim ownership of a large part of the city, but neither side actually really has it complete.
Right. And how long has this been going on in Pokrovsk? I feel like it's been 2 weeks. Russia is saying the same thing about Pokrovsk. And what operational factors, such as weather, that Russia claimed that the weather, or Ukraine claimed that weather was used on Russia's behalf when moving in towards not the center, but the key place? Yes. How do you think these are shaping the forces' ability to counter?
Well, it's been going.
Yes.
This battle's actually been going on for a year, so it's not 2 weeks, and and Ukraine has been holding on to this area because it's not just a city. I mean, it's the region around it. What's happened, of course, in the last week or so, is that the weather has closed in a bit. It's been very misty in Ukraine. A lot of mist and sort of 4 or 5 degrees around this area. And because of that, Ukraine hasn't been able to use drones as effectively as before. And Russia, during the nights, of course, with mist, Russia has been able to move more people forward. So it's become slightly more an infantry man-to-man battle in the last weeks. But if there's a clear day, which inevitably there will be sometime soon, then Ukraine will come back heavily using drones and try and force the Russians back out of Pokrovsk. I don't think they'll manage that. I think that there's going to be a line across Pokrovsk that stays there for maybe even 3, 4, 5 months before Russia overwhelms the Ukrainian side with sheer numbers. But they're going to lose an awful lot of people in the process.
100%. Thank you so much for sharing that insight. Glenn Grant, please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we stay in the region. A Russian flagged tanker sailing from Russia to Georgia loaded with sunflower oil reported that it was attacked off of the Turkish coast, but its 13 crew members were unharmed. According to Turkey's maritime authority, the vessel Mid-Volga 2 was attacked 130 kilometers off of the Turkish coast, but did not make a request for assistance and was proceeding towards Turkey's Sinop port. Meanwhile, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has said that attacks in commercial ships in the Black Sea were unacceptable and also issued a warning to all related sides. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Glenn Grant. He's a former advisor to Defense Minister of Ukraine, joins us live from Kyiv. Thank you, Glenn, for staying with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Glenn, what more can you tell us about this situation, and why did Ukraine decide to attack a shadow fleet a few days ago and then now this?
Because they can. Because these are actually ships of war. They're not commercial, open, for anybody. They are Russian ships of war being used by Russia to carry goods, to make money, to continue to fight in the war. And therefore, they are legitimate targets for the defending country. And that is why Ukraine attack them. I mean, why this particular time? It's likely because they actually had the ability to do so, may not have had last week or the week before. And so I think that you will find that there will be more Russian ships attacked. I think it's nonsense for Erdogan to complain about this, because he knows full well what the war is about, and his country has done many similar things in Syria when they've been fighting. So a
Yes.
vessel that is actually carrying stuff, I'm sorry, it's an act of war.
Yes. But how do you think President Erdogan, why do you think he still issued a warning that attacks on commercial, well, in his words, commercial ships are unacceptable? How should Ukraine engage with Turkey now?
To be honest, I don't think they should bother, because it's not Turkey's business. This is a Ukraine-Russia problem. And if Turkey believes that it's wrong to do this, they have the ability to close the straits and actually keep Russian ships inside the Black Sea. They haven't done so, and so they are complicit on the Russian side at this stage. So they don't actually have a leg to stand on in terms of international law.
And how does Ukraine assess the security environment in the Black Sea? Yes.
Well, it's obviously still not pro-Ukraine, I think you would say. I mean, because they're not putting ships all over the Black Sea, so they're still using the unmanned systems. And Russia still has major ships that they can actually dominate the Black Sea where and when they can. Although even Russia is getting wary of putting its ships in the Black Sea, because they're worried about Ukraine drones actually sinking them.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Glenn Grant for joining us as a former advisor to Defense Minister of Ukraine from Kyiv. Thank you very much. Now we move on to UK. Britain's Justice Minister David Lammy has said that he is preparing to launch what he calls the most sweeping modernization of the courts in generation. The reforms set to be unveiled in Parliament today are aimed at tackling a rapidly growing backlog of criminal cases in England and Wales. Among the most controversial proposals are plans to scale back the right to a jury trial, limiting it to the most serious offences, including rape, murder, manslaughter, or cases that meet a public interest threshold. Lower-level offences carrying sentences of up to 5 years could instead be handled by magistrates or a newly created division of judge-only courts. The proposals have already sparked backlash, with more than 100 lawyers warning the changes could undermine long-standing legal protections. Lammy insists the reforms are essential to prevent what he calls a total collapse of the trust in the justice system. He's also pledging £550 million over 3 years to expand victim support and help train the next generation of criminal barristers. Now for this discussion, we welcome Peter Bohm. He's an editor at Weekly Blitz, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Peter, for joining us again. Good to see you. Peter, what more can you tell us about this ongoing change in UK?
Yeah, this is very pertinent level of discussion. There is no doubt that since we experienced COVID some few years ago, the jury system has been clogged up, and justice is not being handed out expeditiously. And day by day, week by week, the courts are getting further blocked up with people awaiting trial. So there is a problem here. However, the solution which David Lammy is proposing is so far out of synchronisation with the British Constitution and with hundreds of years of how British justice has come to be where it is today, has received such a backlash that even though he's tried very hard today, he's been on all our major television networks trying to justify the scheme, the backlash is such that I don't think this will get off the ground in the way that David Lammy is proposing. So he recognises that there is a problem, and the problem is the number of cases that are being put aside or taking too long to come to trial. However, his solution is to destroy what would be 1,000 years of British tradition since the Magna Carta. There are other ways of achieving this. Now, the backlash has come obviously from the judiciary themselves and from ordinary folk who believe that we don't want to get to the situation as there is in the United States, where the justice system is politicized. I think we've seen it on our TV screens and in the news media since Donald Trump came into power. It was like that when Biden was in power, that judges are promoted and given roles, not because necessarily of their abilities or credibilities, but because of their political persuasion. And if we are going to have a situation in the United Kingdom, which David Lammy is proposing, whereby one person or up to 3 magistrates can determine what would have been formerly a trial by jury, then it's clear that the political persuasions of those magistrates would have an impact on the outcome of the trial. So trial by jury is certainly the fairest methodology we have in a global judicial system, and I think David Lammy will have to come back from his original plans. Perhaps he's just testing the water to see how far he's gone. It can go, and as I say, this morning he's been on all our television screens and on our major radio news broadcasts trying to justify his decision. We recognise in the United Kingdom there is a backlog and a problem, but David Lammy's solution really is not the answer.
So what do you think would be the answer? As you mentioned, many people are unsatisfied with current system and how the system is especially running since COVID. Do you think this change is inevitable, but like you mentioned, the David Lammy way is not the answer?
Well, I'll give you an example of what's happening and what could be changed. If a trial by jury starts today, the judge and the jury do not get into the court until 10:30 in the morning. Then there is a break for lunch between 1 and 2. Then there is an afternoon tea break between, I think, 2:15 and 2:30, and then the judge leaves the court at 4 o'clock. Now, if you speak to anyone in gainful employment, that's a pretty small working day. That is an absolute time that could have been used to continue the jury. So we could get, just by excuse me, the time allocated each day to a trial, we could get that, we could get that done in half the time. We could get that done in half the time. So I think an extension of the day, plus working at weekends, would expedite the situation. Furthermore, more money could be put into the system to allow more courts to open up. A number of courts were closed during COVID, and they could reinstitute those courts and get the thing going. So there are a number of ways that could be used rather than this wholesale change, which would not be, which would certainly not the answer.
What do you think is the short-term effect of this?
The short-term effect is a huge amount of people criticising the government for even assuming that this would go through without any challenge. And an already unpopular government is making itself even more unpopular by doing this. Now that's the short term, that will be the short-term effect. So I think the medium-term effect will be a reconsideration that the government will have to have with the judiciary and the police to to come up with a solution that is a much better answer to the one that David Lammy is proposing. As I say,
Yes.
extended working hours and working at weekends, opening up the courts, more money put into the system to create the to make the
Yes.
legal profession more attractive.
Yes, 100%. Thank you very much, Peter, for sharing that and also highlighting how British media is covering this issue. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Peter Baum for joining us as editor of Weekly Blitz from London. Now we move on to our next news. Germany's Foreign Minister John Witkoff is to visit China on December 8th and 9th. He has confirmed the plan at the Policy Forum in Berlin, saying the trip would go ahead before the end of the year. Witkoff has been scheduled to travel to Beijing in late October for what would have been the first ministerial visit under Chancellor Friedrich Merz. But he pulled out at the last minute after China agreed to only have one of his requested meetings. Chancellor Merz, meanwhile, has said that he plans his own visit to China in the first weeks of 2026. And that's a wrap on the NewsX Eurozone. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.